President Trump is again trying to exclude undocumented immigrants from the 2020 census. In a memorandum released yesterday by the White House, the president instructs Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross to leave out any immigrant living in the U.S. without authorization from the apportionment count. Ross, whose department oversees the census, had tried to add a citizenship question to the nation's official count last year. However, the Supreme Court blocked the move. Chief Justice John Roberts called the administration's rationale contrived. The latest attempt by the Trump administration already has the attention of the Democratic-led Congress. House Oversight Chairwoman Carolyn Maloney is calling for an emergency hearing on the census Tuesday. Activists fear blocking undocumented immigrants from the census could lead to an undercount of all communities of color, especially those with large Latino populations. Hansi Wang is a national correspondent for NPR covering the 2020 census, and he joins me now from New York. Welcome, Hansi. Great to have you with us. So why is blocking undocumented immigrants from the census such a priority for the Trump administration?
Well, President Trump's memo, what it does call for is excluding undocumented, unauthorized immigrants, specifically from the census numbers used to reapportion the seats in Congress. And that's what the Constitution says. The number one purpose of the U.S. Census is to determine the population of the country and to divide up the seats among the states based on that population. And he wants to exclude from that base, that number, unauthorized immigrants. And you know, it's unclear exactly why President Trump is so focused on this. He says that he believes that this would be a better way of doing things, a more constitutional way. But if you take a look at the wording of the Constitution, the fifth sentence of the Constitution spells out instructions for how to conduct this count, and it uses the word persons. Persons is a key word. There's no mention of citizens, for example. And the 14th Amendment, that was enacted to end the counting of enslaved people as 3/5 of a person. To this point, at this point, we're counting the whole number of persons in each state. And those numbers determine how many congressional seats each state gets. But President Trump is trying to go against more than 200 years of precedents. And ever since the very first census in 1790, the numbers have included both citizens and non-citizens, regardless of immigration status. But ultimately, this is about power and money when we're talking about the census.
He also seems to be going against the Supreme Court ruling. Remind us exactly what reason was given in blocking the Trump administration's previous push on the census. And so what legal challenges could the Trump administration now face?
You know, based on my reporting, this action that he took this week to issue this memo does not necessarily go against the Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court ruling upheld lower courts that blocked the administration from adding a citizenship question onto the 2020 census forms, and that has happened. If you take a look at a 2020 census form, either online, on paper, or you call in a call center, they will not ask a version of, is this person a citizen of the United States? That has been permanently blocked by multiple federal courts last year, so not printed on the forms. What he is doing now is he's saying, President Trump, that he has a discretion once the Census Bureau has finished counting all the people living in the country, and those numbers are ultimately delivered to the president per federal law. The president's responsibility is then, under the law, to deliver a report of those numbers to Congress. And President Trump is saying in his memo that he has discretion to determine who is included in those numbers that he ultimately transfers over to Congress. But again, if you take a look at the Constitution, it says it is Congress who has the final authority over the census, not the president.
So, but let me ask you how the president plans to determine who is not, a citizen from this census. Is there a question anywhere in the census that asks, is there someone in the household that is not a citizen? Because as we just discussed, they cannot ask the question directly about citizenship.
There's no question about citizenship status at all, directly about the person who's responding, about other people in a household. It just does not ask about citizenship status. And it also does not ask about immigration status. So what that means is that the data that the Census Bureau is collecting from these forms, the Bureau, based on people's responses, can't tell who is a U.S. citizen, who is not, who has lawful immigration status, who does not. They don't know because they're not asking for that information. what the Trump administration has done is issued an executive order last year after the Trump administration backed down on pushing for a citizenship question. And this executive order directs federal agencies to share with the Census Bureau their existing government records about citizenship in order to help researchers at the Census Bureau to try to figure out, match together different records and try to determine each person's citizenship status. And they're also collecting information that this memo says that could help them figure out possibly the immigration status of people. But it's interesting. I was listening in on a telephonic hearing today for one of the many lawsuits involving the census. This one was about citizenship data, but there was a Justice Department attorney speaking during this hearing to a federal judge, basically saying that the Trump administration at this point really does not know how they're going to figure out who is and who is not an authorized immigrant, an unauthorized immigrant. That is up in the air. There's no methodology for that at this point. They have not finished gathering government records to help them figure that out. So it is an open question how the Trump administration will carry out this memo that President Trump just issued.
All right. Well, Hansi Wang, thank you so much for sharing your reporting on this, important topic with us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.